All right, folks. Call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting called and convened this the 24th of November 2015. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask if you would to please stand with us as Councilwoman Kimberly Bookert leads us in a pledge of allegiance, followed by the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Lord, we come before you right now as humble as we know how, thanking you and praising you, God, for this beautiful day you've blessed us with. God, we're asking that you come into this meeting, touch all of our minds. God, let us say nothing that is not in your will or your desires for the direction of this city. God, we ask that you touch all of our citizens, touch all of our employees. God, touch everyone that has any impact on our city in any way, shape, or form. Allow them to do nothing to come against us or to cause any harm to any of our people. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Amen.
We thank you for joining us this evening as we move steadily towards the end of another year here. And to thank you for being with us this evening. Ms. Duncan, do we have anybody to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
With that, then, we'll move to the minutes of the council meeting from November the 10th, 2015. I'll entertain a motion that they be received.
No motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Sauer?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council departmental reports are contained in your packet this evening. You have a list there of reports, including activity for October. As usual, department heads or Mr. Driggers will be glad to give you information in that regard. Our financial report this evening is being brought to us by Susan Howell in Mr. Seifert's absence. And so, Ms. Howell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just want to briefly go over the financial performance of the city as of October 31st, 2015. We'll start out with the general fund revenue. It's $1,673,577, and our expenditures are $6,102,644, and that leaves us 2% under budget. And then if you look at our dashboards and compared to our benchmarks, where it's a little different story here, we are $407,104 under budget, or under the benchmark for revenue, $353,249 for expenditures, which leaves us a total negative of $760,353. And our general fund cash balance is $3,983,437. And I will move on to the hospitality fund. The revenue is $631,069, which is actually 4% over the budget. The expenditures are $106,098, and our cash balance is $1,200,692. The stormwater fund is at a revenue of $27,395. Expenditures are $26,489, and our cash balance for the stormwater account is $782,658. So I will be happy to answer any questions.
Council? Ms. Howell, is the lack of revenue number just the end of the year kind of cycle with the tax revenue slowing down before we start a new year? Or?
The biggest piece of this is their operating transfers. Our benchmark is a 3-year, and so in the past we've actually had to move money from the hospitality fund into the general fund for cash flow reasons, and we just didn't have to do that yet, and so that's why it looks like we've already budgeted for it, but we haven't had to do it yet, so we'll probably be doing that in November.
Thank you.
Okay.
Others? We appreciate the report. Thank you. that, we'll move to the administrator's report. Mr. Driggers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Most of my items are calendar items, so I will make sure that we send this to you as well so that you're not having to frantically make notes. But many of those things you are aware of. I did have an opportunity to send you a communication a little earlier in reference to the Chamber of Commerce's Celebrate Business event. That'll be taking place next Wednesday evening. That's December the 2nd. We are a presenting sponsor of that event. It'll be held at the Cannon Center again next Wednesday evening. If your schedule will allow, we certainly would like for you to join us for that event. If you could just take a couple of moments and respond yes or no to that email. I think so far I've heard from a couple of folks that immediately responded. And so, again, if your schedule will allow, we'd love to have you. We have space for you, but if you cannot, then we certainly want to make sure that we have a full table because ours is usually the one right in the center at the front, and so we want to make sure it's a full table. So when you get an opportunity, if you can just shoot me a quick note to let me know your attendance plans on that, please. Several things happening as we prepare next weekend for Christmas in Greer Station. Our tree lighting ceremony taking place on Friday evening the 4th. Our Breakfast with Santa event taking place on Saturday the 5th. We have 3 sessions of that event on Saturday morning, running up to midday on Saturday. May have mentioned this previously, but that event sold out in hours. We made tickets available, pre-sales, and 2 of the events sold out for a standing room only crowd that came through that Thursday evening, and then the remaining tickets sold within the first couple of hours the following morning. It is an extremely popular event here in our community. I never hold back tickets so that when folks call and ask me, do I have a few? I do not. So I do hope that those folks that really wanted to make sure that they were able to get in that event were able to get those tickets. But please, I'm going to be coming in that morning and volunteering and working with our staff, and we invite you to do the same thing. So if you'd like to join us on Saturday morning, we would certainly love to see you, and there will be a great representation of our community as we do those 3 events for Breakfast with Santa on that Saturday morning. And then on Sunday is our annual Christmas parade sponsored by Greer Relief. Obviously, our folks are extremely involved in that. All of our departments are involved in helping to make sure that is a successful event for the community, but the annual Christmas parade on that Sunday afternoon. Looking forward to that. The following week, our Employee Appreciation Breakfast is on that Friday, December the 11th. That is at 7:30 that morning. Again, I certainly hope that your schedule will allow us to all be together as we recognize the efforts of all of our employees and say thank you to them. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to gather that group together. We have a bit more of a formal breakfast that morning. It's a really exciting and fun environment for our employees, for our team members, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for that again this year. And then last but not least, you may have, if you just checked your emails as you were walking in the door, some information was sent out. We will have our annual Christmas gathering, council and our leadership team. My wife, Christy, and I are again pleased to be able to invite you to our home, and we're looking forward to that. We will be doing that on Tuesday evening, December 22nd. That would be the night that you normally would have met, and with no meeting scheduled for us, we decided that might be a good opportunity to use that Tuesday evening for that event. So you'll have something in your inbox when you check it. Those just went out just a few moments ago. So certainly hope that you and your guests will be able to join Christy and myself for that. We always enjoy hosting that event. Those of you that, if you have not had an opportunity to visit with our nurse, all of our team members are reminded that December the 3rd is the last appointment date for scheduling with her to make sure that all folks have had an opportunity to review their wellness credits as we approach the new year. We have a new nurse this year, and she is receiving high marks and praise from all of our employees. She seems to be a really good, common sense, down-to-earth, recognizes what we're doing and why we're doing it. So again, if you've not had an opportunity to meet with her, we certainly want to make sure that those appointments happen before December the 3rd. We are doing internal reviews of all of what we would consider projects for the Municipal Achievement Awards. We mentioned to you a year ago that we are now doing an internal competition for Municipal Achievement Awards as well. We encourage each of our departments to submit an application that is being monitored and coordinated through our communications office. We will evaluate each of those projects, those innovative ideas and projects that we've participated in over the past year, and then we will award a winner within our own city for a Municipal Achievement Award of the winning one, and then the one that is selected for us here as our departmental winner, that is the one that we will submit to the Municipal Association for the competition again this year. We always submit a project, and we're looking forward to reviewing those that are submitted through our respective departments here the next several weeks. Coloring books have been extremely popular. We've had several of you ask for those. As you are aware, we ran out. It's amazing. It's the number of requests that we have received for those coloring books. We have received a fresh supply. We've reordered, and we now have plenty on stock and available for us. If you would like to gather some of those to have for yourself, so that when you're invited to schools or to programs or to churches, whatever that invitation may be that you want to be able to take those for the children, we have those available. So please just see Steve, and we'll make sure we get those to you as well. We are wrapping up on our citizen surveys. We actually extended the surveys for an additional week. Had a little bit lower participation than we had at the same point in time than we had 3 years ago. So we made a decision to kind of do a little more promotion of those citizen surveys to try to encourage folks to fill them out if they've had them. I'm trying to remember, Mike, about how many at this point? About 300, a little less than 300.
Right around 300.
About 300 or so have had responses to so far. And so not quite the level that we would hope for. We're getting good responses. People are being very thorough, and they're submitting those to the survey group, but we would love to have more as we start to interpret that data to evaluate as part of our benchmarking process of how we compared 3 years ago to satisfaction of municipal services. So we extended that a little bit, and that's just about to wrap up. We'll have those reports ready for you after the first of the year when you do your strategic planning near the end of February. So we'll have those reports for you at that time. Did also want to provide you with some information concerning our recycling program. Had an opportunity to meet this week with ACE Environmental, our contract company that does our curbside recycling and also our municipal solid waste curbside pickup program. One of the things that happens periodically relative to recycling, and it's a very cyclical market, is that prices go up and down, and that is not unusual in that market. It is a commodity market. One of the things that we are experiencing now is that not only is the market not paying very much for recycling, but there is now actually charges for receiving recycling. And that has happened before, and again, it's very cyclical for us, but we are in a process now that the market is so very, very low on all recycling materials that the vendors, and they previously had 2 vendors. One of the vendors is no longer operating, and so now there's a single source vendor, and that vendor is actually charging a per ton fee for the collection of that material. It's important for us to keep that recycling material out of the waste stream. We have DHEC regulations and requirements, as well as just our efforts to keep recyclable materials out of the landfill. One of the things, and you may or may not be aware, but glass is a contaminant in recycling material if it is commingled. It drives the price down of all other materials, again, because it is a contaminant. Glass obviously being made of sand, when it gets commingled in, it breaks, it contaminates, and then actually gets you the lowest price possible for any of the other materials. So there's a great need to be able to separate glass out of a recycling waste stream. Our policy has always been for curbside recycling that we collect newspapers, cardboard, and aluminum, and that's always been. When there was a commingled market, our vendor has been allowing all materials to really be placed into that and then commingled in because it really wasn't causing any problems. But now that the market is at an absolute low and the contamination from the glass has put us in a situation that now the company that receives those, if recycling materials have glass in the recycling, if it's commingled with glass, they charge us $15 a ton for that recycling material. If it's commingled recycling without glass, they charge us $5 a ton for that. So obviously that you can see the difference in price. Now, at the end of the year, it's not a huge amount of money for us because we're only doing about, when I say only, but we're doing about 30 tons of recycling per month. And so whether we calculate 30 tons per month at $15 a ton or 30 tons a month at $5 a ton, again, the dollars aren't huge, but it's a matter of how we continue to move forward and what we want to do. So what I've advised ACE Environmental is that we would like to, that we want to kind of keep things at a status quo until the first of the year. Want to be able to gather some additional data, make sure that we are evaluating what options are available for the disposal of recycling materials. How do we get that to a location that doesn't put it into the landfill? And whether or not we need to make a decision to separate glass out. Now, at the recycling center, glass is separated. So there are no issues or concerns that we will continue to do recycling, and we'll continue to collect glass and aluminum and steel, and we'll collect paper and cardboard and plastic and all of those things that we've always collected at the recycling center. That is normal, no changes whatsoever to what we're doing in that situation. But the curbside collection is where I think we're going to have to start giving some real serious consideration about how we move forward. Our vendor has proposed to us that we may actually want to do a test project, a pilot, in some of our areas that are extremely strong in recycling, that we may want to consider going to the 96-gallon container, allowing folks either commingle or to separate, whatever our decision ultimately would be, but allow for more convenience for the collection of that recycled material, and then possibly go to a 2-week schedule for collection by using that 96-gallon container. These are all things that we're going to be needing to have some discussion about and some evaluation as we continue to move forward. But I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that as we're continuing to move forward. Right now, we're going to continue to collect what's placed at the curb. We're going to continue to commingle that, but you will need to give us some direction as we move forward about how we want to deal with different products that are in that recycling stream. So all of that is FYI at this point, but it's all things that we're going to have to make some decisions about as we continue to move forward. Any questions about that?
What are our costs if to send that to the landfill per ton?
$16.
So if they charge us much more, it's
Economically, it would be cheaper to put it in the landfill than it would be to recycle it.
because
Economically.
we're paying for the folks to pick it up.
Well, and we actually, in our contract, part of the price for our curbside collection is recycling collection. So yes, there is a breakout cost in our contract for municipal solid waste collection. There's a breakout cost for recyclable collection, and there's a breakout cost for brush, limbs, leaf we do internally. We do that ourselves. But the brush and the household goods and those types of things are broken out in that contract as well.
So over the last 5 years, we could actually put a tonnage cost for recycling onto the amount recycled, correct? Or
We know based on the amount of tonnage what our savings has been, because we're removing that from the waste stream.
well,
But now that there's a charge for
well,
it,
what I'm saying is that there's a breakout cost that we pay our hauler, correct?
for collection, not for
Collection.
disposal,
No,
for
for
collection.
collection.
Correct.
So then we could say however many tons that were picked up, we could, just do the math and figure out what it's costing us per ton
Yes.
to pick up those recyclables, plus any kind of charges, and then you can determine if, if it's not saving us any money, send it to the landfill by all means, but.
Well, we have some DHEC requirements as well. We have some waste reduction requirements under DHEC that we have to meet, or we would have financial penalties for not meeting those numbers as well.
How large are those penalties?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that we have benchmarks that we have to meet for reducing waste stream into the landfill. And that's why it's always been very important for us to increase our tonnage in recycling, because those numbers over time continue to grow. And that's a regulatory issue through DHEC. I will find out exactly what those penalties are.
Yeah, if we could just run the numbers, even if there's a regulatory fine and it's less than recycling, take the penalty and send it to the landfill. So I'd like to see that broken down. If you
Absolutely. And that certainly is why we know that council needs to have involvement from that perspective, because there are a number of communities. Greer may or may not choose to be one of those, but there are a number of communities that they recognize that it's, and we've always said you don't save money by recycling. And I don't think we've ever indicated that there is an economic reason for recycling. It is a sustainability issue of reducing waste stream in a landfill, and that's always been the issue. It's never, at 30 tons, even at $16 a ton to the county landfill, it isn't a huge amount of money, but it's 30 tons that comes out of what goes into the landfill, and what DHEC's looking for is what is that waste stream contribution from Greer, Simpsonville, Malden, Travelers Rest, City of Greenville, and Greenville County, so that they're determining what is that reduction in solid waste county by county. And then we have a proportionate share of that, but we will find out what those numbers are.
So the state is regulating how much a county can take into their landfill.
They regulate that you must have recycling measures in place to reduce that stream, and then they benchmark that, and they monitor that, and if you fall below your benchmark, there are financial penalties for that. Which is, again, why we've sold ACE. Do what you're doing so that we can gather as much information as we can so that council can make informed decisions.
And I think it's important to remember that we need to make informed decisions and we need to be responsible for the way we're spending our funds, but we also need to acknowledge that we've known since the day we started picking up recycling that it was not going to be as cost beneficial as probably some of the alternatives. But as has been mentioned, at this council on a number of occasions, from a community standpoint, it's an important part of what we do to show who we are and what we're about. And the idea that we are a community that recycles and takes that very seriously, I think is indicative of the fact that we care about the community, we care about the environment, and that we're progressive, and that we also understand that market comes and goes. And I'm afraid one of the things that might happen, and this is worth discussion, is that stopping and starting that program would ultimately hurt it in the long run. So, I'm for taking a look at it, but I think we've got to be
And
careful
Mayor,
about how we proceed.
Your point is exactly, that is the reason that I've just asked Ace, please continue business as usual as we can evaluate so that we're not sending mixed messages to our community that we start and stop and we accept certain things and don't accept certain things. I just felt it was appropriate that we continue what we've communicated and continue to do that so that you can get all the data that you need. This is information that just came to me yesterday. I mean, I literally got this information yesterday morning from our vendor, and we're trying to get additional information so that we can provide you with everything that you need. Mr. Airwood, you're absolutely correct. We've got to know if there are going to be financial penalties from DHEC. What are they and when do they kick in, and what does that mean? To have that data is what I need to make sure that you're fully informed. But I was a little concerned that with this shift in the market, you may read some things in local media that says, prices are changing, another municipality is making changes or doing something different. I wanted you to be aware that we've been informed and we are gathering that data now so that we can bring information back to you. That's the information that I have to share with council this evening. Unless there's a matter from council's perspective, I do not have any items to request for executive session tonight.
Thank you, sir. Council, one item of note, our executive assistant for the administration is, as y'all are aware, Elizabeth Adams, and her husband officially welcomed a new addition to their family yesterday, a baby girl by the name of
Rose Kellett.
Rose Kellett Adams. And while they officially recognized her yesterday, I thought it would be appropriate as a matter of the record that we enter her name and say congratulations to Elizabeth and her husband, and welcome Rose. Although she is not a Greer resident, we are glad that she and her mama are both doing well, and we look forward to meeting Rose in person and having Elizabeth back with us when she's ready and able to come back. So just wanted to make note and to let you know that if you call and you get the phone answered by Mike Sell, don't be taken aback. Mike has stepped into that role, as well as have a number of other people on that floor who are helping cover for Ms. Adams as the administrator and others made the decision, since it was going to be during the holiday season, and there were a number of folks that volunteered to help out. Rather than to put a temp in that job, they are going to move those activities around. So feel free to call. Ms. Duncan will be glad to help you, or whoever answers the phone is prepared to point you in the right direction. So with that, then we'll move to appointments of boards and commissions, the first of which is the Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Greg Crusoe's term expires 12/31/2015, and we'll need to take action in that regard when we have a recommendation to either reappoint Mr. Crusoe or appoint somebody else to that position.
Mr. Mayor, we are aware that Ms. Ruthie Helms had a communication with Mr. Crusoe, and if it is council's desire, he is willing to continue to serve in that capacity.
Council, having heard that information from the administrator, I will entertain a motion from a member of council to nominate Mr. Crusoe to another term.
Move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion in that regard? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council of Recreation Association's Board of Trustees has several people that are coming up. In District 2, Edward Ballinger's term will expire at the end of this year, as will Wayne Yance in District 4 and Charles Ryans in District 6. Is anybody prepared this evening to make a nomination?
Yes, I would like to go ahead and nominate Charles Ryan. I have talked with him as well as with Ann Cunningham from the Parks and Recreation Department, and he would welcome the opportunity to serve again. He's done a real good job, and he's volunteered quite a bit.
We'll entertain that as a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis, Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, in regards to the Recreation Association Board of Trustees, Jennifer Humphreys, who was an at-large nomination, has resigned effective November the 3rd, 2015. Her term will expire December the 31st, 2017. In your packet this evening, I have brought you a recommendation to fill that position. His name is Mark Metcalf. Mark is an active member of our community. He lives downtown, has been with Greenville Tech in the training and development area there, has recently moved to a position with the Upstate Alliance, and has offered to fill that remaining time on Ms. Humphrey's term. I offer him this evening to fill the at-large spot. I'd like to ask a member of council to nominate Mr. Mark Metcalf, please.
Second.
Have a motion and a second in that regard. Any questions, comments about his service? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis, Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to reappoint Wayne Yount to the Recreation Association Board of Trustees. Wayne's done a great job representing District 4. I talked to Ann Cunningham, and she said he's doing a phenomenal job, and she'd love to have him on for another term. So I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Yount be reappointed to another term.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for any discussion or questions. Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Mr. Griffin, are you waiting on a text message from Mr. Ballinger?
I'm going to have to find somebody else.
Oh, you're going to have to,
Yeah, I'm
okay,
gonna
you're
find
going to
somebody
have
else
to
for
see him
that,
face to face, huh? Okay, all right, well, that's fine. We've still got time to do it.
Okay.
We'll move to items of old business, the second and final reading of ordinance number 31-2015. This is an ordinance amending the City of Greer Code of Ordinance in an addition, and add a section creating an accommodations tax advisory committee establishing the guidelines and procedures thereof. Ms. Howell is making her way to the front of the room, and I suppose she's going to give us an update and an overview of some recommendations.
Yes, at this point, we just need to, the action is to approve the ordinance, and I have a correction to the ordinance. It's a slight change on page number 3, under number 2 in the letter G. It should read, control and repair of waterfront erosion, including beach renourishment and. So that slight change has been made to the ordinance.
We suspect to have no impact to us.
Let us hope not.
Like that's some beach trouble. They'll be in trouble.
Ms. Duncan, do you have the numbers there before you, or shall we ask for those to be repeated in regards to that amendment?
I have it.
You have it?
I do.
Good. I knew you would. I'll entertain a motion that we receive the change in regards to the second and final reading of ordinance number 31-2015.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion in that regard? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. In items of new business related to the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, the next piece of action before us this evening is the Tax Advisory Committee. With that, I think you've got some copies here. Ms. Howell, you're going to walk us through the proposed committee as suggested by staff.
Sure, I'll be happy to. It is the 7-member committee. We'll start out with the first group, hospitality industry, restaurant sector. We've nominated Bill Tyler from Chick-fil-A and Randy Jones from Mutt's Barbecue. Then the next section is the lodging sector. Christina Lewis from Holiday Inn Express and Gary Patel from the Quality Inn. And the cultural interest representative, we have nominated Neil Waldrop. We approached him because he is the president of the board of directors at the Greer Cultural Arts Council. And then our last two positions are the at-large representatives, and we have Scott Stevens and Rita Deaton, and they're very active members of our community. I'll be happy to get some more information if you need anything.
Council will take these recommendations individually. Any questions while we've got Ms. Howell before us this evening?
Would any of these members be voting to give funds to any, like, there's one who is on the cultural arts, would he be voting to give money to the cultural arts?
Potentially. That could happen, but that's a 7-member committee. But I mean, the recommendation would come from the committee of whole. But yes, there could be members on the committee that have association with groups that could potentially apply for these funds.
These funds are to be used to advertise for folks outside of our city to come to our city for at least an overnight. Is that how?
These aren't restricted. You're thinking of the funds that we did at the last meeting that were restricted solely for that purpose.
Okay.
This would be festivals, events, any activity in the community that would put people into restaurants, into hotels, into the community that they just may not otherwise. The others they had to be used for advertising to bring people in to sleep, hospitality. The accommodations also includes the food, which is anything that would encourage folks to come into the community and expend dollars in the accommodations environment. Anything additional, Ms. Howell, because I know you're much more familiar with it. Okay.
Others? Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate the information and the nominations. Council, I'll need a motion and a second for each of these. We'll take them individually. Bill Tyler, I'll entertain a motion.
So motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions in regards to Mr. Tyler's service? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, Mr. Randy Jones, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion in that regard?
One thing I should have asked probably before we started, I noticed we have 4 non-resident members nominated and 3 resident members. That seems to be maybe not a good thing, but I guess we feel they all have the best interest of the city at heart.
Their businesses operate in the city.
Yeah, the
I understand
businesses
that,
are there.
I understand that, but it seems like a city resident would be better, but that doesn't necessarily exclude them.
Well, I'm not exactly sure why Mr. Jones indicated he's not a city resident.
Well, yeah, I wondered the same
He lives on
I was
Tree
wondering the
Street,
same
so I'm
thing.
not exactly sure why he would have indicated he's not a city resident.
He's listing West Road, I guess he thinks that's his residence.
Yeah, well, he may work there enough to be his residence, but
Yeah.
he lives downtown. And I think I think to your point, that's that's certainly of note. But I was going to add to this conversation. I really don't know anybody on the hospitality side that does more for our citizens and for the city when it comes to being available than Mutt's Barbecue. Those folks have been great to work with our fire department and our police department. I know they just recently, we had a mentoring program that the police department have put together, and Randy found out about that project and provided the entire meal. Just has bought in entirely to this community and does what he can in that regard. And so, I think he has, whether he realizes that he lives in the city or not, has been a great advocate for the city of Greer. With that, Mr. Jones, any other comments, questions in that regard? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert, Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Entertain a motion to receive Christina Lewis.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin, Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Motion to receive Gary Patel.
Second?
Questions? Discussion?
His address is the same as Christina Lewis, so. I'm not sure what that means. Under their name? She lives at the Quality Inn.
Graphical error.
Is that what it is?
Well, she works at Holiday.
She's checking out the competition.
I guess.
I apologize for those errors. We'll make sure they're correct. We're going to give you
Okay.
updated bios.
If she lives at 611 West Wade Hampton, she lives in the city. She lives with Gary Patel.
Yeah, because there's actually, it's listed as the address, and it's also listed as the place of employment for Gary, so there's obviously a mistake. Motion is second in regards to Gary Patel. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis, Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Motion to receive Neil Waltrip.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comment? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Motion to receive Scott Stevens.
So motion.
Second?
Motion and second. Any comments?
He has the same address as Neil Walter. So.
Okay.
He knows you did it to make sure he's paying attention.
Appreciate that.
It's a tight group, isn't it? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. And apparently Reno lives at work, too. Mr. Reno Deaton, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think we need to have a long discussion about him.
Your address correct, Mr. Reno?
Ms. Duncan?
Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, we have the first reading of ordinance number ordinance number 32-2015, but I believe the administrator has information in that regard.
Yes, sir. With council's permission, we would like to ask you to hold this over. It is important that we move forward in making sure that our NAICS codes are up to date. However, we need to do a little additional evaluation to the financial impact of making shifts in those classifications. When we did our original ordinance several years ago, those that were on the council at the time may recall that was a revenue neutral process, that any time that you make an adjustment, if one goes up, one goes down, but the intent is to keep everything revenue neutral. When we make changes to existing classifications, and if someone's classification goes to a lower class, there will obviously be a financial impact to that. We will need to make those adjustments regardless, but we need to be fully informed of what the financial impact and what the timing needs to be to do that. I have personally not had an opportunity to review that with our finance department, and so I'm asking your permission for us to table this item. It potentially would not come back until January. I'm not sure that we can have that for the one meeting in December, but with your permission to table this item, we'd like to do that full evaluation, and then make you fully informed of the financial impact of any proposed changes.
Council, at the request of the administrator, do I hear a motion to table ordinance number 32-2015?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further questions or comments of the administrator in regards to this? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Earwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas, Mr. Bettis, Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, we have no items for executive session. Stand adjourned.